Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. This is part 2 because part 1 got cut off short of the Torah Portion Week 16. So this will be called Torah Portion Week 16 part 2, which we will be finishing Exodus chapter 2. Without further ado, we're going to get right into it. Exodus chapter 2. Let's share screen. Verse 1. Let's read.
Now a man of the house of Levi married a daughter of Levi, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got him a papyrus basket and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in the basket and set it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. And his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Soon the daughter of Pharaoh went down to bathe in the Nile, and her attendants were walking along the river bank. And when she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maidservant to retrieve it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the little boy was crying. So she had compassion on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sisters said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call one of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" "Go ahead," Pharaoh's daughter told her. And the girl went and called the boy's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay your wages." So the woman took the boy and nursed him. When the child had grown older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, and explained, "I drew him out of the water."
All right. So as we've been doing, we've been reading back and forth with Jasher, and we're going to do the same here. We're first going to review, we touched on before, Jasher 67, just the structure of the family and his siblings here. Read verse 1 through 4 in chapter 67. There was a man in the land of Egypt of the seed of Levi, whose name was Aram, a Levite. And this man went and took a wife, namely Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, his father's sister. She was 126 years old, and he came unto her. And the woman conceived and bare a daughter, and she called her name Miriam, because in those days the Egyptians had embittered the lives of the children of Israel. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Aaron. For in the days of her conception, Pharaoh began to spill the blood of the male children of Israel. And so we see that Moses has been a theme throughout his anointed chosen is the youngest child, the youngest male, or one of the youngest in the timeline of all those that have been chosen in our review of Isaac, Jacob, Moses, King David, etc., that we talked about before. And then just in the Targums chapter 2, we're going to read verse 1 and 2 that kind of puts all of it in the structural order. And Aram, a man of the tribe of Levi, went and returned to live in marriage with Jochebed, his wife, because as previously stated, men were not sleeping with their wives because of the law killing of the male children, in whom he had put away on account of the decree of Pharaoh. And she was the daughter of 130 years when he returned to her, but a miracle was wrought in her, and she returned unto her youth as she was when in her minority she was called the daughter of Levi. Verse 2, and the woman conceived and bare a son at the end of 6 months, and she saw him to be a child of steadfastness, and hid him 3 months, which made the number 9. All right. Now we're going to go back to Jasher, and we're going to read chapter 28, starting at verse 1. And it was at the time the spirit of Elohim was upon Miriam, the daughter of Aram, the sister of Aaron. She went forth and prophesied about the house, saying, Behold, a son will be born unto us from my father and mother this time, and will save Israel from the hands of Egypt. And I actually forgot to put the verse that calls her a prophetess in the canon. Let me go and put that, because the canon doesn't really show us anything prophetic with Miriam, but she is called a prophetess in Exodus 15:20. And here we are seeing her be a prophetess. So Exodus 15:20 reads, And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and etc., etc. So she's called a prophetess, but we don't see her in that role in the canon. But we are now witnessing it in the book of Jasher, verse 1 of chapter 68. So little connection verse right there. Let me actually write that down. I forgot to write that verse. Exodus 15:20. All right, verse 2. And when Aram heard the words of his daughter, he went and took his wife back to the house after he had driven her away, the time when Pharaoh ordered every male child of the house of Jacob to be thrown into the water. So we see how important it was for Miriam to prophesy this, because he was not sleeping with his wife, so Moses would not be able to come into existence if he ever took back his wife. And obviously, she was already getting really old. Continuing in verse 3. And Aram took Jochebed, his wife, 3 years after he had driven her away, and he came to her, and she conceived. And at the end of 7 months from her conception, she brought forth a son. The whole house was filled. So the Targum says 6, this says 7. And the whole house was filled with great light, as the light of the sun and moon at the time of their shining. And when the woman saw the child, that it was good and pleasing to the sight, she hid it for 3 months in an inner room. In those days, the Egyptians conspired to destroy all the Hebrews there. And the Egyptian women went to Goshen, where the children of Israel were, and they carried their young ones upon their shoulders, and their babes who could not yet speak. And in those days, when the women of the children of Israel brought forth, each woman had hidden her son from before the Egyptians, that the Egyptians did not know of their bringing forth, and might not destroy them from the land. And the Egyptian women came to Goshen, and their children who could not speak were upon their shoulders. And when an Egyptian woman came into the house of her woman, her babe began to cry. And when it cried, the child that was in the inner room answered it. So the Egyptian woman and told it at the house of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh sent his officers to take the children and slay them. Thus did the Egyptians to the Hebrew women all the days. And it was at the time, about 3 months after Jochebed's concealment of her son, that the thing was known in Pharaoh's house. And the woman hastened to take away her son before the officers came. And she took for him an ark of bush rushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river brink. And his sister Miriam stood afar off to know what would be done to him, and what would become of her words. And Elohim sent forth at that time a terrible heat in the land of Egypt, which burned up the flesh of man like the sun in his circuit, and it greatly oppressed the Egyptians. And all the Egyptians went down to bathe in the river on account of the consuming heat, which burned up their flesh. And Bathia, the daughter of Pharaoh, went also to bathe in the river, owing to the consuming heat, and her maidens walked at the riverside, and all the women of Egypt as well. And Bathia lifted up her eyes to the river, and she saw the ark upon the water, and sent her maid to fetch it. And she opened it and saw the child, and behold, the baby wept, and she had compassion on him. And she said, this is one of the Hebrew children. And I know that, like, we're going to see in this whole reading in Jasher, there's a movie out there called The Ten Commandments, and a lot of other bad movies of the good book. But the perception is that they didn't know he was a Hebrew. Only Bethia did. But that's not what it is at all. Everyone knows he's a Hebrew child, as she knew right away he was a Hebrew child. Verse 20, and all the women of Egypt walking in the river desired to give him suck, but he would not suck, for this thing was from the Adon, in order to restore him to his mother's breast. Miriam, his sister, was at that time amongst the Egyptian women at the riverside, and she saw this thing, and she said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and fetch a nurse of a Hebrew woman, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the young woman went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to Jochebed, take this child away and suckle it for me, and I will pay thee thy wages. She's literally getting paid to take care of her own child at this point. What a blessing, right? 2 bits of silver daily, and the woman took the child and nursed it. And at the end of 2 years, when the child grew up, she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he was under her as a son, and she called his name Moses, for she said, because I drew him out of water. And I'm not going to read the rest, but he has many names. Moses has many names given by every person dear to him in his life at this time as well. And we're going to continue now to Jasher 69. Reading verses 4 through 9. And when Pharaoh, king of Egypt, saw that the counsel which Balaam had advised respecting the children of Israel did not succeed, but they still were fruitful and multiplied and increased throughout the land of Egypt, and the man who shall be found deficient in his labor, verse 5, then Pharaoh commanded in those days that a proclamation should be issued throughout Egypt to the children of Israel, saying, no man shall diminish anything of his daily labor. And the man who shall be found deficient in his labor, which he performs daily, whether it be mortar or in bricks, then his youngest son shall be put in their place of the literal brick. Crazy, right? And the labor of Egypt strengthened upon the children of Israel in those days. And behold, if one brick was deficient in any man's daily labor, the Egyptians took his youngest boy by force from his mother and put him into the building in the place of the brick which his father had left wanting. And the men of Egypt did so to all the children of Israel day by day, all the days for a long period. But the tribe of Levi did not at that time work with the Israelites, their brethren, from the beginning, for the children of Levi knew the cunning of the Egyptians, which they exercised at the first towards the Israelites. And now continuing, last pretty big story here of Moses in his youth. Chapter 70, verse 1. And in the 3rd year from the birth of Moses, Pharaoh was sipping at the banquet when Al-Paranith, the queen, was sitting at his right and Bethia at his left, and the lad Moses was laying upon her bosom, and Balaam the son of Beor with his 2 sons. And all the princes of the kingdom were sitting at the table in the king's presence. And the lad stretched forth his hand upon the king's head, and took the crown from the king's head and placed it on his own head. And when the king and princes saw the work which the boy had done, the king and princes were terrified, and one man to his neighbor expressed astonishment. And the king said unto the princes who were before him at the table, what speak you, and what you say, O is in this matter? And what is to be against the boy on account of this act? And Balaam, the son of Beor, the musician, answered before the king and princes and said, Remember, king, the dream which thou didst dream many days since, that which thy servant interpreted unto thee. Now, therefore, this is a child from the Hebrew children, in whom the Spirit of God, who is the Spirit of God. And let not my Lord, the king, imagine that this youngster did this thing without knowledge. For he is a Hebrew boy, and wisdom and understanding are with him, although he is yet a child. And with wisdom has he done this, and chosen unto himself the kingdom of Egypt. Verse 8. For this is the manner of all the Hebrews, to deceive kings and their nobles, to do all these things cunningly, in order to make the kings of the earth and their men tremble. And then he goes these examples, and we scrolling down to verse 18 now. Same chapter of 70. Now, therefore, Lord King, behold, this child has risen up in their stead in Egypt, to do according to their deeds, and to trifle with every king, prince, and judge. If it please the king, let us now spill his blood upon the ground, lest he grow up and take away the government from thy hand, and the hope of Egypt perish after he shall have reigned. And Balaam said to the king, let us moreover call for all the judges of Egypt and the wise men thereof, and that is due to this boy, as thou didst say, and then we will slay him. So Moses, 3-year-old Moses, is on the chopping block here. 3-year-old. So far, we have read Jasher 70, verse 1 through 8, and we're currently reading 18. We're going to read 18 through 31. And Pharaoh sent and called for all the wise men of Egypt, and they came before the king. And an angel of the Adon came amongst them, and he was like one of the wise men of Egypt. And the king said to the wise men, sure, I have heard what this Hebrew boy who is in the house have done, and thus has Balaam judged in this matter. Now judge you also, and see what is due to the boy for the act he has committed. And the angel, who seemed like one of the wise men of Pharaoh, answered and said as follows, before all the wise men of Egypt and before the king and princes, if it please the king, let the king send for men who shall bring before him an onyx stone and a coal of fire, and place them before the child. And if the child shall stretch forth his hand and take the onyx stone, then shall we know that with wisdom has the youth done all that he has done, and we must slay him. But if he stretch forth his hand upon the coal, then shall we know that it was not done with knowledge that he did this thing, and he shall live. And the thing seemed good in the eyes of the king and princes. So the king did according to the word of the angel of the Adon. And the king ordered an onyx stone and coal to be brought and placed before Moses. And they placed the boy before them, and the lad endeavored to stretch forth his hand to the onyx stone. But the angel of the Adon took his hand and placed it upon the coal, and the coal became extinguished, and lifted it up and put it in his mouth, and burned part of his lip and part of his tongue, and he became heavy in mouth and tongue. And when the king and princes saw this, they knew that Moses had not acted with wisdom and taken off the crown from the king's head. So the king and princes refrained from slaying the child. So Moses remained in Pharaoh's house, growing up, and the Adon was with him. So focus it on verse 29. Another reason to bring it up, because this answers why Moses is not eloquent in his speech, as spoken in Exodus 4:10. And Moses said unto the Most High, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. And so we have a story in, sorry about that. We got to share the verse. We have a story in the book of Jasher. What is it? Jasher 70 verse 29 is the connection verse for Exodus 4:10. All right. All right. So let's continue back in Exodus 2 with verse 11. Now that we're past the youth of Moses. Oh my goodness, y'all saying, is the audio not well? Oh, the audio ain't reading. Can y'all hear me though? Y'all can hear me, right? Okay. Completely fine. My goodness. I'll be the I'll be the reader now. Okay. One day after Moses had grown up. So that's why we did all the stories of Moses as a babe and in his youth, because now we're moving forward. He has grown up. He went out to his own people and observed their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. After looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. And the next day, Moses went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. And he asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your companion?" But the man replied, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you planning to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "This thing I have done has surely become known." When Pharaoh heard about this matter, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, where he sat down beside a well. All right, let's go to the book of Jasher 71, continuing with expounding on the in Genesis here. We're going to read the entirety of chapter 71, 1 through 16. And when Moses was 18 years old, he desired to see his father and mother, and he went to them to Goshen. And when Moses had come near Goshen, he came to a place where the children of Israel were engaged in work. And he observed their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian smiting one of his Hebrew brethren. And when the man who was beaten saw Moses, he ran to him for help. For the man Moses was greatly respected in the house of Pharaoh. And he said to him, "My Lord, attend to me. This Egyptian came to my house in the night and bound me, and came to my wife in my presence, and now he seeks to take my life away." And when Moses heard this wicked thing, his anger was kindled against the Egyptian, and he turned this way and the other. And when he saw there was no man there, he smote the Egyptian and hid him in the sand, and delivered the Hebrew from the hand of him that smote him. And the Hebrew went to his house, and Moses returned to his home and went forth and came back to the king's house. And when the man had returned home, he thought of repudiating his wife, putting her away, for it was not right in the house of Jacob for any man to come to his wife after she had been defiled. The woman went and told her brothers, and the woman's brothers sought to slay him, and he fled to his house and escaped. And on the second day, Moses went forth to his brethren and saw, and behold, two men were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, "Why dost thou smite thy neighbor?" And he answered him and said to him, "Who has set thee for a prince and judge for us? Dost thou think to slay me as thou didst slay the Egyptian?" And Moses was afraid, and he said, "Surely the thing is known." And Pharaoh heard of this affair, and he ordered Moses to be slain. So Elohim sent his angel, and he appeared unto Pharaoh in the likeness of the captain of the guard. And the angel of the Adon took the sword from the hand of the captain of the guard, and took his head off with it. For the likeness of the captain of the guard was turned into the likeness of Moses. And the angel of the Adon took hold of the right hand of Moses, and brought him forth from Egypt, and placed him from the borders of Egypt, a distance of 40 days' journey. And Aaron his brother alone remained in the land of Egypt, and he prophesied to the children of Israel, saying, Thus says the Adon Elohim of your ancestors, throw away each man the abominations of his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. And the children of Israel rebelled and would not hearken to Aaron at that time. And the Adon thought to destroy them, were it not that the Adon remembered the covenant which he had made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In those days, the hand of Pharaoh continued to veer against the children of Israel, and he cursed and oppressed them until the time when Elohim sent forth his word and took notice of them. Continuing, chapter 72, I'm reading verse 21 through 37. At that time that the war, so another war, like I said, many wars recorded in Jasher. At that time that the war and the siege were against Cush, Moses fled from Egypt from Pharaoh, who sought to kill him for having slain Egyptian. And so we're going to read that he's with the children of Cush for a good bit. It says they go straight to Midian. He gets to Midian, but he has a good stopping point for many years amongst the children of Cush. So just giving you an idea of what we're going into that is not recorded in the canon, like many of the things we're reading here, right? All right, verse 22. And Moses was 18 years old when he fled from Egypt from the presence of Pharaoh. And he fled and escaped to the camp of, I'm just going to name him Kiki Giannis, or I'm just going to name him Kiki, which at that time was besieging Cush. And Moses was 9 years in the camp of Kiki, king of Cush, all the time that they were besieging Cush. And Moses went out and came in with them. And the king and princes and all the fighting men loved Moses, for he was great and worthy. And his statue was like a noble lion. His face was like the sun, and his strength was like that of a lion. And he was a counselor of the king. And at the end of 9 years, Kiki was seized with the mortal disease, and his illness prevailed over him, and he died on the seventh day. So the servants embalmed him and carried him and buried him opposite the city gate to the north of the land of Egypt. And they built over him an elegant, strong, and high building, and they placed great stones below. And the king's scribes, etc., etc. Now, after the death of the king of Cush, it grieved his men and troops greatly on account of war. So they said one to another, Give us counsel that what we are to do at this time, as we have resided in the wilderness 9 years in our homes. If we say we will fight against the city, many of us will fall wounded or killed. And if we remain here in the siege, we shall also die. For now all the kings of Aram and the children of the east will hear that our king is dead, and they will attack us suddenly in a hostile manner, and they will fight against us and leave no remnant of us. Now, therefore, let us go and make a king over us, and let us remain in the siege until the city is delivered up to us. And they wished to choose on that day a man for king from the army of Kiki. And they found no object of their choice like Moses to reign over them. And they hastened and stripped each man his garments and cast them upon the ground. And they made a great heap and placed Moses thereon. And they rose up and blew with trumpets and called out before him and said, May the king live, may the king live. And all the people and nobles swore unto him to give him for a wife Adoniah, the queen, the Cushite, wife of Kiki, and they made Moses king over them on that day. So now we're going to just be skimming through, giving you a quick summary over this really dense story of Moses' time around the Cushites before he goes to the land of the Midianites. All right, so now we're going to chapter 73. I'm going to read verse 1 through 3. 55th year of the reign of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. That is in the 157th year of the Israelites going down to Egypt, reigned Moses in Cush. Moses was 27 years old when he began to reign over Cush, and 40 years did he reign. And the Adon granted Moses favor and grace in the eyes of all the children of Cush. And the children of Cush loved him exceedingly, so Moses was favored by the Adon and by men. All right, I got just little dots connecting. So now we're skimming to verse 31 in chapter 73. And they placed a royal crown upon his head, and they gave him for a wife Adoniah the Cushite, wife of Kiki. And Moses feared the Adon Elohim of his father, so that he came not to her, nor did he turn his eyes to her. So he never had relations, even though they gave her this woman. For Moses remembered how Abraham had made his servant Eleazar swear, saying unto him, Thou shalt not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan for my son Isaac. Also what Isaac did when Jacob had fled from his brothers, when he commanded him, saying, Thou shalt not take a woman of Canaan, nor make an alliance with any of the children of Ham. For the Adon, our Elohim, gave Ham the son of Noah and his children, all his seed, as slaves to the children of Shem and to the children of Japheth, unto their seed after them for slaves forever. Therefore Moses turned not his heart nor his eyes to the wife of Kiki all the days that he reigned over Cush. All right, we're now going to continue. And there's a lot more wars and things going on all the way to chapter 76, verses 1 through 12. We just read Jasher 73, 1 through 3, and then 31 through 36. Now we're reading 76, 1 through 12. And Moses, the son of Aram, was still king in the land of Cush in those days, and he prospered in his kingdom, and he conducted the government of the children of Cush in justice, in righteousness, and integrity. And all the children of Cush loved Moses all the days that he reigned over them, and all the inhabitants of the land of Cush was greatly afraid of him. In the 40th year of the reign of Moses over Cush, so yes, 40 years, a lot of things happened, which is what I'm summarizing right now. Moses was sitting on a royal throne while Adoniah, the queen, was before him, and all the nobles were sitting around him. And Adoniah, the queen, said before the king and the princes, What is this thing which you, the children of Cush, have done for this long time? Surely you know that for 40 years that this man has reigned over Cush, he has not approached me, nor has he served the gods of the children of Cush. Now therefore hear, O ye children of Cush, and let this man no more reign over you, as he is not our flesh. Behold, Menacrus, my son, is grown up. Let him reign over you, for it is better for you to serve the son of your Lord than to serve a stranger and slave of the king of Egypt. And all the people and nobles of the children of Cush heard the words of Adoniah, the queen, had spoken in their ears. And all the people were preparing until evening. And in the morning they rose up early and made Menacrus, the son of Kiki, king over them. And all the children of Cush were afraid to stretch forth their hand against Moses, for the Adon was with Moses. And the children of Cush remembered the oath which they swore unto Moses. Therefore did they did no harm unto him. But the children of Cush gave presents to Moses and sent him from them with great honor because they were too afraid to try to force him out, right? And that is a summary of the 40 years he reigned as king of Cush. That was immediately after his departure from Egypt before he got to Midian. All right, so we're going to read the remainder of Exodus chapter 2, verse 16. Oh, I forgot. The audio reader ain't working. I'm reading. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. And when some shepherds came along and drove them away, Moses rose up to help them and water their flock. When the daughters returned to their father Reuel, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early?" "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds," they replied. "He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "So where is he?" their father asked. "Why did you leave the man behind? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage, and she gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." After a long time, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned and cried out under their burden of slavery, and their cry for deliverance from bondage ascended to Elohim. So Elohim heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Elohim saw the Israelites and took notice. All right, to the book of Jasher we go. We are in chapter 76. I will be reading starting at verse 13 through 24. So Moses went to Midian, for he was afraid to return to Egypt on account of Pharaoh. And he went and sat at a well of water in Midian. And the 7 daughters of Reuel, the Midianite, went out to feed their flocks. And they came to the well and drew water to water their father's flock. So the shepherds of Midian came and drove them away. And Moses rose up and helped them and watered the flock. And they came home to their father Reuel and told him what Moses did for them. And they said, "An Egyptian man has delivered us from the hands of the shepherds. He drew up water for us and watered the flocks." And Reuel said to his daughters, "Where is he? Wherefore have you left the man?" Reuel sent for him and fetched him and brought him home, and he ate bread with him. And Moses related to Reuel that he fled from Egypt and that he reigned 40 years over Cush, and that they afterwards had taken the government from him and had sent him away in peace with honor. And when Reuel had heard the words of Moses, Reuel said within himself, "I will put this man into prison, into the prison house, whereby I have conciliate the children of Cush, for he has fled from them." And took and put him into the prison house. And Moses was in prison 10 years. While if Moses was in prison house, Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel, took pity over him and supported him with bread and water all the time. And all the children of Israel were yet in the land of Egypt, serving the Egyptians in all manner of hard work. And the hand of Egypt continued in severity over the children of Israel in those days. Going now to chapter 77, verse 21. And the labor imposed upon the children of Israel in the days of Adikam, which is the new Pharaoh, exceeded in hardship that which they performed in the days of his father. The children of Israel sighed every day on account of their heavy work, for they had said to them, "When Pharaoh shall die, his son will rise up and lighten our work." But they increased the latter work more than the former, and the children of Israel sighed at this and their cry ascended to the Most High on account of their labor. And the Most High heard the voice of the children of Yasharallah and their cry. In those days, Elohim remembered to them his covenant, which he had made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Elohim saw the burden of the children of Israel and their heavy work in those days, and he determined to deliver them. And Moses, the son of Aram, was still confined in the dungeon in those days, in the house of Uel the Midianite. And Zipporah, the daughter of Uel, support him with food secretly day by day. And Moses was confined in the dungeon in the house of Uel for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, which was the first year of the reign of Pharaoh over Egypt, in the place of his father, Zipporah said to her father Uel, no person inquires or seeks after the Hebrew man, whom thou didst bind in prison. Now, therefore, if it seem good in thy sight, let us send and see whether he is living or dead. But her father knew not that she had supported him. Uel, her father, answered and said to her, has ever such a thing happened that a man should be shut up in prison without food for 10 years, and that he should live? Zipporah answered her father, saying, surely thou hast heard that the Elohim of the Hebrews is great and awful, and does wonders for them at all times. He is who delivered Abraham from of the Chaldeans, and Isaac from the sword of his father, and Jacob from the angel of the Adon who wrestled with him at the ford of Jabbok. Also, this man has he done many things. He delivered him from the river of Egypt, and from the sword of Pharaoh, and from the children of Cush. Can he deliver him from famine and make him live? And the thing seemed good in the sight of Uel, and he did according to the word of his, and sent to the dungeon to ascertain what became of Moses. And he saw, and behold, the man Moses was living in the dungeon, standing upon his feet, praising and predecessors. And Uel commanded Moses to be brought out of the dungeon. So they shaved him, and he changed his prison garments and ate bread. And afterward Moses went into the garden of Uel, which was behind the house, and he there prayed to the Adon and to his Elohim, who had done mighty wonders for him. And it was that while if he prayed, he looked opposite to him, and behold, a sapphire stick was placed in the ground, which was planted in the midst of the garden. And he approached the stick, and he looked, and behold, the name of the Adon of Elohim of hosts was engraved thereon, written and developed upon the stick. He read it and stretched forth his hand, and he plucked it like a forest tree from the thicket, and the stick was in his hand. And this is the stick with which all the works of Elohim were performed after he had created heaven and earth and all the hosts of them, seas, rivers, and all their fishes. And when Elohim had driven Adam from the Garden of Eden, he took the stick in his hand, and he went and tilled the ground from which he was taken. And the stick came down to Noah and was given to Shem and his descendants until it came to the hand of Abraham the Hebrew. And when Abraham had given all he had to his son Isaac, he also gave him this stick. And when Jacob had fled to Padar Aram, he took it into his hand, and when he returned to his father, he had not left it behind. Also, when he went down to Egypt, he took it into his hand and gave it to Joseph, one portion above his brethren. For Jacob had taken it by force from his brother Esau. And after the death of Joseph, the nobles of Egypt came into the house of Joseph, and they came into the hand of Uel the Midianite. And when he went out of Egypt, he took it in his hand and planted it in his garden. And all the mighty men of the Kenites tried to pluck it when they endeavored it to get Zipporah his daughter, but they were unsuccessful. So the stick remained planted in the garden of Uel until he came who had the right to it and took it. And when Uel saw the stick in the hand of Moses, he wondered at it, and he gave him his daughter Zipporah for a wife. Oh my goodness, so much. We see that it was made out of sapphire in verse 39 here. And this is a sign of the throne of the Most High. Exodus 24:10. And they saw the Elohim of Israel, and there was under his feet as it were a paved work of sapphire stone. Ezekiel 1:26. And above the firmament there was over the heads the likeness of a throne as the appearance of sapphire stone. All right, and the last reading here, Jasher 78, verse 7 through 16, to close out this. In those days, Moses, the son of Aram, in Midian, took Zipporah, the daughter of Uel the Midianite, for a wife. Zipporah walked in the ways of the daughters of Jacob. She was nothing short of the righteousness of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. And Zipporah conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I was a stranger in a foreign land, but he circumcised not his foreskin at the of Uel, his father-in-law. And she conceived again and bare a son, but circumcised his foreskin, and called his name Eleazar, because Elohim of my father was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, greatly increased the labor of the children of Israel in those days, and continued to make his yoke heavier upon the children of Israel. And he ordered a proclamation made in Egypt, saying, give no more straw to the people to make bricks with. Let them go and gather themselves straw as they can find it. Also the tale of bricks which they shall make, let them give day, diminish nothing from them, for they are idle in their work. And the children of Israel heard this, and they mourned and sighed, and they cried unto the Adon on account of the bitterness of their souls. And the Adon heard the cries of the children of Israel, saw the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed, and the Adon was jealous of his people and his inheritance, and heard their voice, and he resolved to take them out of the of Egypt, to give them the land of Canaan for possession. And now that is officially the end and closing of week 16 of our Torah portion. So much to glean from it, especially that's not in the canon, filling in the gaps between Genesis to Exodus. I pray this gave more understanding in many different ways of just the story, the history, his story, and the overall makeup of his Torah. Once again, Shabbat Shalom, and may Abba Baruch each and every one of you.